You're the only one without a hat.
I know.
I'll let you know when. Hang on just a second.
I'm wearing my Beast Tornado shirt today. Basement East.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Fair warning.
All right. Andrew, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Hey, guys. Andrew here with Nashville Severe Weather. We are on YouTube Live here this afternoon talking about a possible severe thunderstorm event tonight. We've had several of those past few days, it seems like, and they just keep kind of coming in. But we're also looking at a flash flood threat for tonight. And so we wanted to spend some time with you this afternoon to just kind of talk about that and to go through the models a little bit, talk a little bit about what's going on, who might be affected, and that kind of thing. So thanks for joining us here on YouTube Live this afternoon. So, hey, on the call today, we got David Drobny over there. We'll toss it to him first in just a second. Will Minkoff's here. We got Angie Lisi over here. She's a meteorologist. She joins us this afternoon, and she's going to have some great insight for us here in just a few minutes. But David, what's happening out there, man?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. We're looking at this, what looks like a developing supercell near Jackson, Tennessee. So to give you a little bit of orientation, here's Nashville, here's Williamson County, and there's a storm that's rotating aloft, and Angie's going to talk more about that here in a second. It's the subject of a severe thunderstorm warning, and it's actually kind of moving this direction towards Williamson County. And if we look at a different view, here's that same storm. And just so you got to get an idea of what the Weather Service has done, there's a tornado watch in these purple counties here. You notice this is Williamson County. It's not included right now, but all the counties to our south are included. And there's a question as to whether or not this supercell is going to make it here in a few hours into Williamson County. So that's going to be the real concern for us. And the reason that Williamson County was excluded is there's a little warm front that is on these hot colors down here. It's riding right along this warm front. And the idea is this warm front may move north into Williamson County. And if it does, this little supercell is going to follow wherever that warm front goes. So if you live around 840 or really anywhere in Williamson County, but especially down Spring Hill or near Independence High School or Franklin, even Nolensville, Fairview, kind of in that southern part of Williamson County area, we need to be watching this for the next couple of hours. It's possible that the front stays south and it just kind of goes by us. But we're going to talk more about that here in a second. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the flash flood potential. We move over here to the HRRR model. I have it on a loop. It's got a little bit off and on rain. And then really tonight, the rainfall really starts to pick up. And it just pours on us overnight, especially after midnight as a cold front comes through. And the rainfall totals on this can be pretty impressive. If we go all the way over to the end of this model run, it's showing an additional 2.5 inches of rain in Nashville and an additional 3 to 4 inches down here in Williamson County that already has seen 3 inches or more in spots. And that might cause a flash flooding, and especially a bad flash flooding event for us tonight. So those are the two things we're worried about. The flash flood threat is independent of the tornado potential that we're concerned about. So that means even if we don't get any supercells with damaging straight line winds tonight, and even if we don't get a tornado risk tonight, we're still going to see a ton of rain. And so we are worried about flash floods, and we'll talk more about that here in this call. So it was my job to just give you the little overview, and I've done that. And we're going to throw it over now to Angie Lisi, who's a meteorologist, and she's going to dig into the weeds on this one and pull out the weeds and explain them to us, for us. So I'm going to stop my screen share so she can start hers. There you go, Angie, it's all you.
Guys, thanks for having me. Let's see, kind of technologically challenged these days. So what we wanted to talk about, or what I wanted to talk about, was basically to touch more on what David was mentioning with the warm front across the area. I've got some surface obs pulled up here, and there is that warm, moist air somewhere along that warm front, which is kind of hard to decipher between all like this large gap in data right there. But you can see the green numbers are the dew points. So anywhere where the dew points are like the mid 60s to pushing 70 degrees, that's that moist air south of that warm front. So that warm front is continuing to creep up northward. And that, again, as David mentioned, that storm near Jackson, that's kind of riding along that front. And that's problematic to me because I was looking at, sorry, I'm going to talk a little bit of technical stuff. North of that warm front, we have these higher gradient winds, and the steep the winds, when they change with height and they change in speed with height, that's usually good for the longevity of a storm, basically. So we have the energy from the warm front that's going to lift these storms and continue to develop them over the next few hours. And unfortunately, in that like southwestern middle Tennessee area, there's a lot of moisture transport. So we've got all the moisture coming in right there. You've got the lift from the warm front, and you also have the stronger winds that are changing and increasing with height. The good news is those winds are kind of on the northern part of the warm front, which is where Davidson and Williamson are right now. We're just on the northern side of that warm front. So if the storm stays south of that, which they probably won't, but if the storms just rode that warm front, we may not see the worst of this stuff. We would be elevated or basically not being able to tap into that low level moisture, which is where the tornado potential comes from. So the strongest winds are going to be on the northern side of that. So if that Jackson storm rides along that warm front, anywhere near that within 5 miles of that warm front is going to be tornadic potential, unfortunately. So I don't know if you can see, and they just issued a tornado warning for that storm, which is pretty smart. You can start to see that storm rotate. I don't know if Andrew could maybe share the radar.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Give me just a second and I'll get that pulled up
Cool.
for us.
Yeah, if you can go from the Memphis radar
Sure.
and just maybe look at just a quick reflectivity loop. You can actually see that guy. I refer to storms as guys. That storm, when it's looping, the interesting thing about that is it's moving almost west to east. Okay. The other storms you can see are kind of shooting off a little bit more north than they are to the east. That's fine. That those storms we're not going to be concerned about. It's these right turning storms. And what we mean by right turning is basically if the whole storm is moving northeast, if it makes a right turn, it's going to be moving more east than it is north. And that's exactly what this storm is doing. And when it does that, it's easier for a tornado to form in the lower levels. And you have a boundary. You've got that warm front somewhere around there. You've got this great circulation there just southwest of Lexington. That's really unfortunate, but it does look like as these storms move into our area, move closer to those stronger winds, there actually might be a couple hours, the next couple of hours, where the tornado potential is going to increase. I don't really see it beyond that. Beyond the next few hours of these storms, I don't really see a tornado threat. I see more of a heavy rain and flooding a threat. And that's going to, again, as David said, that's going to persist through the entire overnight hours, and the flash flood watch is in effect through Sunday evening, I believe, right now. But we got that's a monster storm. And even the storm closer to Clifton there, that guy's got a circulation on it as well. And again, that's even further south. I wouldn't be surprised if that started developing a circulation on it as well. It's got a decent one aloft. Usually these long sustaining storms called supercells will have a rotating updraft, and that's what will sustain it for a long time, but will also pop out a tornado sometimes in the lower levels. And that does look a little bit better aloft than it did before. So I wouldn't be surprised if that one might take off. But boy, that monster storm there. And in addition to that tornado warning with that tornadic storm, it sure looks like it's going to do something there. It's also going to be a hail threat and a damaging wind threat with that as well. So I think that's going to increase over the next couple of hours as those push towards us. Hopefully that's the only guy that really gets going. But
So David's going to keep an eye on that storm, and it's certainly something worth looking at. We're familiar with that trajectory, that section of Tennessee where that storm is moving through. is familiar to us. So we'll certainly keep an eye on it. Angie, I wanted to ask you another thing. If you wouldn't mind bringing your screen share back up, I saw that on your, in the world of Zoom, I can see all the browser tabs you have open. And so on one of your browser tabs, I saw you had an advanced hydrology outlook from the Weather Prediction Center in Maryland. I was wondering if you could talk, I know we have this issue with severe weather, but talk about some of the flood threat that we might encounter tonight. Whether we see tornadic activity, straight line wind damage, et cetera, we're still going to see a whole lot of rain, right?
We're still going to see a whole lot of rain. The jet stream is just wide open over us, which basically moves air out of the way aloft, so air can just fill it back up, and that means a bunch of lift, and you've got tons of Gulf moisture coming up from the south. And with that boundary just kind of laying out across us, you can see this graphic I have here from the Weather Prediction Center. It's basically in that southwest to northeast fashion where the warm front's going to lay out in the next couple of hours. So even outside of the tornado threat and severe thunderstorm threat in the next couple of hours, any of these storms are going to produce massive amount of rainfall. We've already had 2 to 3 inches, and this is a graphic showing anywhere from 4 to 5 inches maxing out. I think that's underdone. I think those numbers could be much higher, especially with the training of these thunderstorms over the same areas when the cold front approaches later overnight. That's probably going to be between maybe 11 p.m. and 3 to 4 a.m. now. Is a little bit later when we get that heavy rain with the front. That front's kind of going to be oriented this way as well. So storms are just going to be training over the same areas nonstop almost for the next, well, with stops, but on and off again for probably the next 12 hours. So we're going to have some pretty decent flash flooding concerns for tomorrow. And I did have some forecast river gauges pulled up here across Middle Tennessee, and the Harpeth, especially in Franklin, here's a forecast of it. And it looks like maybe by tomorrow afternoon, it reaches near record stage. I think Andrew might comment more on that. So these rivers can't really take much more rain. And especially with the convection, that's going to create some flash flooding issues as well. So, and again, the threat continues overnight, which is even worse. So if people can stay off the roadways tonight, that's best.
Cool. Well, let me bring up my screen share here. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was that flood risk that we're seeing and what that might turn into in terms of roadways near creeks and streams. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how you guys can keep yourself safe when we talk about flash flooding. So first of all, you hear say it all the time, turn around, don't drown. If you see a water covered road, stay out of it. Stay out of those flooded areas. Don't allow, obviously this is going to happen at night, so your kids aren't going to be out playing in it. But typically you want to stay out of those floodwaters at all costs. The reason why is because it doesn't take much for you to get swept off your feet. If you have 12 inches of rain, it can sweep you in your car right off the road. 18 to 24 inches will take a good size SUV off the road. 6 inches will knock a person down and allow them to get swept up in floodwater. So we want to make sure that we're staying out of it. In terms of being in your home, get to higher ground. Get out of that area that is prone to flooding. If you live near a place, right? If you live near American Avenue and Charlotte Pike and it floods there, if you live in that spot on Murfreesboro Road out towards the airport where it floods a lot, get out of that area. If you live along the Harpeth River and you know that it's gotten up in your backyard before, tonight's the night where you're going to want to make sure that you've got a way to get to higher ground. Again, don't drive through it. And last but not least, stay informed, stay connected, have multiple sources of quality weather information that you're paying attention to, and make sure that you've got the tools that you need to get warned when you need to get warned.
Yeah, absolutely, Will. That's great info. And, we talk about some of these creeks and rivers around, and we have, you kind of know, if you've been here a while, you kind of know what creeks and rivers we tend to have issues with. And let me share my screen here. This is one similar to what Angie shared just a little bit ago, but this is part of the part of the system here of river gauges. And let me just kind of show you what we're looking at here. And we mentioned Franklin just a second ago. And if the forecast pans out here, this could be one of those, that's about a foot. The crest is forecast to be about a foot under record stage there at the Franklin gauge. And then if you go east toward Bellevue, forecast to crest over there about 25 feet. That's about a foot over the moderate flood stage. So these are the kind of things we're going to be watching. And then, of course, you folks over there in Nolensville know the Mill Creek pretty well. And the gauge there, it's been under control all day today, even with those heavy rains we had this morning. A lot of that fell just to the south of the Mill Creek Basin. And but it got up to about 9 feet there at Mill Creek at Nolensville. That gauge is actually north of town. So even if you may get a little flooding in town, it takes it about 30, 45 minutes to get down under the gauge, which is up at right at the Davidson-Williamson County line. But that got up to about 9 feet, and it starts coming over Culbertson and Bluff roads. They're near the gauge at about 11 or 12 feet. So, we could see that tonight, and those are a couple of roads you don't want to be traveling this evening. So it all depends. I think one thing we can say is it really all depends on where the water falls, exactly where it falls. So, here's a view of the radar we traditionally look at. Let's take Nolensville, for example. Let me turn the radar off. And one thing you can kind of see is a ridge down here south of Nolensville. Well, this is kind of the beginning of the Mill Creek watershed. Okay. So if most of the rain sets up and falls south of that down toward Triune and Arrington, it's not as much a Mill Creek problem because it falls south into a different watershed. Okay. So the water's always going downhill. So it kind of depends on where exactly that water sets up, where exactly the rain sets up as to which basin that falls in. It could be all of them. It could be just a couple of them. And so those are the kinds of things we're going to be watching tonight as far as the flash flood threat. And real quick radar update here, looking back to the west. We're back on the Nashville radar now, looking back down toward Henderson County, down toward Lexington, and we can see that tornado warned storm there. It's not into Middle Tennessee yet. It's still in West Tennessee. That's out there west of the Tennessee River. It'll get to Decatur, and the Memphis National Weather Service office is issuing these warnings now. And then the Nashville office will take over once it crosses the Tennessee River, and or once it, looks like it may cross and still be strong, they'll get out ahead of it and start issuing warnings for Middle Tennessee. So we're going to keep an eye on that as well, guys. Hey, I've got the chat open and on YouTube. If you have any questions, I've seen a couple of them come in. I think, though, they've all been answered as we've kind of gone through here. And one of the things I saw that somebody asked, they said, hey, if we're in a flood prone area, do we just need to go somewhere else tonight? And what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it falls back to, are you able to get a warning? If you're able to get a flash flood warning, and if you get that warning, you're able to get out and get to somewhere that is high ground. I think you need to be prepared for that. I don't think you need to leave until that flash flood warning is issued. Flash flood warnings are something that the Weather Service does a pretty good job at. Angie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say, make sure I'm unmuted. Yeah, I would say if you have a friend's house or a place that that's safe and is not near a creek or anything, I think that might be a good idea to maybe plan ahead if it's not too difficult. But again, like Will said, you got to have the means of getting the warnings either on your phone, either through weather radio, be watching local media, whatever your means are to get the warning first, and then follow what hopefully you have as a preparedness plan already and take the precautions that you would if that were the case. If you've got nothing to do and you've got all the time in the world, then maybe plan ahead right now, because we're going to get a bunch of rain overnight. It doesn't look very positive in that sense. And we're already saturated pretty good across the whole area.
Andrew, I know you see some questions coming in, and of course, a question we get all the time. And anytime we talk about flooding, you want to address that?
Yep, it's the question. It's the question about 2010. I've seen it come a few times, and it just popped up again. So, all right, let's talk about that, guys. That was a big event, and especially down there in Franklin. We're talking about the rivers getting up down there in Franklin. So what do you guys think about comparing this to something like 2010? We get that question a lot, by the way. It's not just this event. We get David that a lot.
David has a rant in the can.
It's not even close to 2010, y'all. 2010 was 17, 18 inches of rain, nearly continuous over a, depending on where you were, 36-hour period. It was a regional flooding event. Now, that said, if water comes in your basement in Franklin tonight, or it's your 2010. So this is why I rant. It doesn't matter how it compares to other events, because no two flood events are the same. As Andrew was alluding to earlier, we have two different water basins in Williamson County. It's like a water basin is just like a bucket. And if you pour water in one side of the bucket, it ends at the bucket. We got two of them in Williamson County alone. It just doesn't help anybody to compare it unless you are an irresponsible clickbait weather provider and you want to try to compare something to something that was historically awful so that you can scare people into watching you. I suppose you could do that. That's not what we're going to do. But I think it also, frankly, disrespects the severity and the widespread nature of the 2010 event to compare this to that. We can say that the rainfall totals, even if the models overperform and go 6-7 inches, is still half of what the 2010 event was. And remember, the 2010 event was so regionally widespread and everybody got hammered. This one probably is going to be a relatively narrow area. So I think it's a fair question. I think I understand why you asked the question. It's a completely like rational, normal question and fair question to answer. But I think what happens is people hear the news, try to compare something to once in 100 years, or in this, so they want to know, is this event going to fit into an historical context? That doesn't matter to the guy who's got a sump pumped water out of his crawl space tonight. So I think the flooding event is potentially worse for Williamson County than it would be for Nashville. But then again, Nashville is going to get less rain, but Nashville doesn't handle rain as well as Williamson County does. It's mostly paved, as we all know. And Williamson County is, well, I guess it's increasingly being paved. But yeah, Andrew, do we have any sense of the ETA on that supercell? It looks like
I was just working on that,
away.
David. Yeah, I was just working on that to see if it was too far away. I'll have to go ahead and share my screen here and let you know a little behind the scenes look here at ETAs here. Let me go out. We're going to go out all the way. This thing goes out all the way at 120 minutes. And they say it's moving at about, about 35 miles per hour. So we're just going to do kind of a rough. All right. So 35 miles an hour only gets it to southwestern Williamson County in 2 hours. So we're looking here at about, like Fairview would be like 650. All right. So we got a couple of hours here on this one. If the speed and the track and all that stays the same as what they're figuring out there in Memphis from the Memphis office. So looking at a couple hours here for it to get to Western.
Yeah, and I would also say I think it's probably unlikely that it takes that path. I mean, it could, but that
it's a right mover. It may go further south.
Yeah, it's going to have to lift the warm front's got to live north, right? And we're not sure that's going to happen. Plus, as Angie was saying, it could be a right mover in turn on us.
Yeah.
There's that other little companion cell down to the southeast of it. So I don't really want to prejudge the timing, but just to get an idea, this is not an imminent threat. I think this could come in, it could ride all the way up into Fairview, it could ride into Spring Hill, or it could go south of Williamson County, or it could fall apart. I mean, it might just run itself right out of that most unstable surface-based air. So I know a lot of people in Nashville are worried about it. I'm not really concerned about it getting all the way to Nashville. I think that's probably unlikely. But we shouldn't turn our back on any of these storms because, warm fronts, when they lift north, these storms love them and they love to ride the warm front. So we need to keep an eye on it tonight.
Now, I believe this one they've confirmed it.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Looks like they have. And looks like now the Nashville office has picked that up and issued a tornado warning over the river now. So it looks like Hickman and Perry now included in a tornado warning for
it might be
looks
for that
to me like
cell.
that looks to me like that cell just to the southeast of it. So it looks like we have two cells there we got to watch.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. That southern cell, that one, at least if you loop it a little bit, that southern one looks like it's moving more north than east, as opposed to the initial tornado warning for the storm near Lexington. That one's got a very strong right turn to it. But that other one's that one's going to run into it near Perryville. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to affect each storm.
Yeah, Angie, do you think that southern cell is going to just take away the inflow and block the one in the north? And now we're mostly worried about that southern one.
It certainly could. That the one further to the west is just a larger storm. It's got a better, longer lasting rotating updraft. So the southern one, if anything, maybe the southern one can just get sucked in and help something spin up in the lower levels. It might it might screw it up for just a little bit, but that storm near Jackson's pretty strong and sustaining itself. So I don't imagine it might screw it up too much, but it is moving into a lesser state or more stable air. So that might help both of them just become less of a threat. But it is also moving into a stronger shear area. So it's really difficult situation to tell what's going to happen. It looks like they warned for the southern one, but I'm not seeing that great of a circulation on that one yet. So I wonder if they're just anticipating a right turn even more so from that western storm.
Yeah, the Weather Service just noted that the tornado warning that was just issued is for the smaller storm out ahead of the very large one that's in Lexington, the one you were just talking about. The smaller storm is rapidly intensifying, and it shows signs that it may be producing a tornado. And the Weather Service is considering a second warning for when the larger storm, the bigger one, crosses the Tennessee River. So we've got two of them. So we probably need to talk about timing on this and go ahead and end this little Q&A, and then really start to cover this on Twitter. And then if we do get a warning, go live and cover the warning. But I will say, if you're in Williamson County, let's watch it. So what was that timing looking like, Andrew?
Yeah, it looks like a couple of hours. We probably have an hour and a half or so before we, we'll see it get into southern Williamson County if it keeps on that track. So, but we're going to watch it all the way, and we'll jump on YouTube Live if we need to. But hey, thanks guys for jumping in here, and Angie, thanks for your help, man. This was great. Thanks for coming in and helping us out with this and explaining some things. And guys, yeah, we'll be over on Twitter. David will be on Twitter at Nash Severe WX. Will's going to take your reports as we need to tonight, as he always does, and does a great job with that. The Weather Service loves those things, and we've just been cranking those reports out, and it's been awesome. Yeah, so absolutely. Hashtag T-Spotter.
One of the things, I know we're wrapping this up, but it happened today where David and I were talking about hail in a storm. We're talking about whether or not we thought the Weather Service was going to warn it. We started asking for reports of hail. What size hail are you going to see? The size 1-inch hail reports started coming in, and immediately after that, the Weather Service had the verification, the information that they needed to push the button on the severe thunderstorm warning with the ultimate goal of protecting life and property. Well, we could spend a lot of time with somebody like Angie talking about how reports like that make an informed decision. But I think it's safe to say that they help. So that T-Spotter program, there's nothing like it in the country. Keep it up. Keep making these reports for us. Include photos, specifics about location like cross street, what you're seeing. We call through it, we send it to the Weather Service, and it helps save lives. So those reports are really important, and I thank everybody that's participating in that.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great case in point this morning for sure. But hey, everybody, we're going to jump off of here, and we'll be back if we need to on YouTube Live. And let's keep an eye on those storms back to the southwest. Everybody have a good evening.